Hey there, how's it going everyone? I know it's been a while, and I know this isn't my usual style of content, but with the recent reveal of Death Battle Season 10 lineup, albeit in code, I couldn't resist throwing my hat into the ring of throwing out a few predictions. I'm going to start in clockwise order, starting with the question mark, and then continuing from there. Now, for the question mark, many people have been predicting this is going to be Bill Cipher versus Discord's time to shine, rightly so given the chaotic nature of those two characters. However, this slot could also be filled by any number of matchups meant to represent the finale. Some standouts in that category include the likes of Master Chief versus Samus, Maka versus Ruby, or even Galactus versus Unicron. For the dollar sign, there's actually quite a few ways you can take this. The most obvious I've seen is Scrooge McDuck and Mr. Krabs, the two most associated with money, greed, and all that entails. Another line of thinking is that the dollar sign isn't applied to the characters themselves, but rather the companies they're from, as would be the case with Mickey Mouse versus Bugs Bunny from Disney and Warner Brothers respectively. Another possible consideration, one that I haven't seen, is not through the money that they have, but rather through the acquisition of money, as would be the case with characters like Catwoman and Black Cat, as well as Nami from One Piece and Fujiko Mine from Lupin III. The final thought on the dollar sign would be something more akin to a finale, but since I already mentioned those matchups, on to the next sign. This next symbol, a flowery mandala, is a little bit tougher to place initially, but for this spot I have Jago versus Liu Kang, or possibly Maka versus Ruby Rose again. For the skull and crossbones, there are three ways that one could take this, either pirates, poisons, or just the undead in general. The most obvious matchup for this spot, combining two of these that I mentioned, would be Cervantes versus Spinal. For poisons, the obvious matchup there would be Scarecrow versus Mysterio. And one more, it's a pure undead matchup, I see Ghost Rider versus Spawn potentially happening here. The Black Star might make people initially think of matchups pertaining to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, like Joker versus Giorno or Joseph versus Edward Elric, but going in a more general celestial sense, I could see Rosalina versus Silver happening, or in a more literal sense, I see Asta being brought back to fight Black Star from Soul Eater. For the recycling symbol, most people are looking towards Captain Planet versus Aang as a literal environmental fight. However, I see it as less in-universe recycling and more death battle recycling an old idea, like Xehanort versus Darth Sidious from the DBXs, or possibly an older episode like Master Chief versus Doomslayer. For the scales, assumedly the scales of justice, I think this is where they're going to be slotting Alex Mercer versus Cole McGrath, unless they're bringing in Phoenix Wright or Apollo Justice for a matchup. A similar vein could be seen in regards to the morality system with the half and half symbol, which is also why I have Alex Mercer versus Cole McGrath possibly being seated here, but I also have Darth Vader versus Obito as a possibility I've seen thrown around, but one matchup that I think might be represented here is Toga versus Neapolitan for the whole transformative aspect. For the yin-yang symbol, only two matchups come to me, them being Splinter versus Shifu, or Jago versus Liu Kang again. For the man in the suit, most people see that as being Spy versus Agent 47 being brought back from the pole, but I see that as being possibly a different kind of suit. For instance, it could be a suit of armor, like those worn by the Dragonborn or the Chosen Undead, or it could be power armor, like Master Chief versus Samus, Isaac Clarke versus Gordon Freeman, or Blue Beetle versus either Iron Man or Spider-Man in their mech suits. For the pentagram, I've heard the likes of Ghost Rider versus Spawn thrown around, as well as Trigon versus Dormammu, or it could also be Constantine versus Yusuke or another similar spirit detective. For the spike ring and the beaker, everyone's saying Bowser versus Dr. Robotnik, and I can't really refute that, so I can't really give anything else. The crossed swords are in a similar boat. I might have teased them before, but here is where I really think Dragonborn versus Chosen Undead are represented. Similarly, the Atom is, well, Atom versus Ant-Man. The Wave is an interesting one to consider, since we've already had Aquaman versus Namor and SpongeBob versus Super Friends Aquaman. But this one, I'm actually thinking along the lines of Disney, with Hercules versus Maui, or even more left field, Ariel versus Mifa from Breath of the Wild. For the shuffle arrows, I see this as another spot where Bill Cipher versus Discord could be represented, or if we're taking the shuffle more literally, this is most definitely going to be a Yugi Moto matchup. As for Yugi's opponent, most people have been throwing out Ash Ketchum, but honestly, I really dislike that idea. Personally, I'd rather see him fight a fellow card user, being Card Capture Sakura. And those are just my personal thoughts on what each of these symbols could mean in regards to a matchup associated with them. A lot of these matchup ideas are admittedly gleaned from others' predictions of this particular symbol list. Given the subject matter and the nature of predictions in general, there was bound to be some overlap. Overall, I hope you enjoyed this little divergence from normality, and I hope you leave a comment below with your own ideas or critiques as to the new format. This isn't going to be a regular occurrence, just something special to kick off the 10th season of one of my favorite online shows. And with that, I hope you enjoyed the rest of your day and hope to hear from you again. Arrivederci, dudes and dudettes.